Okay, good evening, everyone. Time is now 7 p.m. This is the regular meeting of the Altamont Zoning Board of Appeals, March 24th, 2026. Before we begin, notice where the exits are, 2 to your rear and 1 to my left. If everyone could please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And if I could have the members of the board introduce themselves, starting to the
Lori
left.
Penzi.
Charles Trout.
Simon Litton.
James Sullivan.
Elizabeth Laparco.
Robert Freeman.
ZBA Counsel Allison Phillips.
Okay. We have 2 items on the agenda today. The first being the continuation of a review of the application for an area variance for metal siding requested by Mr. Shank for his pole barn at 104 Main Street. There were some pictures provided of what the siding would look like. I'll leave them up here if anyone would like to see them. Anyone on the board have any comments?
I can just give a little
Sure.
kind of intro to just pick up on where we left off from the last meeting. The applicant has requested an area variance. It was actually 2 area variances, one to allow the proposed pole barn to exceed the maximum height limit in the zoning district, and the second to allow for the installation of metal siding on the pole barn. Under our regulations applicable in all zoning districts for accessory structures, the siding is to be wood. So that would be the second variance that the applicant was requesting. At last month's meeting, the board deliberated on the materials that were submitted and considered information that was received during the public comment portion of the meeting. The board deliberated and determined to grant the variance for the height on the pole barn after discussing the relevant factors in the zoning code and facts specific to this site, which favored the granting of an area variance. And just for the public's benefit, to recap, for an area variance, we're called upon to balance the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted as weighed against any resulting detriment to the neighborhood or adjoining neighboring property owners. So it's a balancing analysis, and we have to look at the specific factors set out in our zoning code to help us determine if the variance should be granted. So for tonight, the board had intended to continue its deliberations on the second variance that was requested, and that's to allow for the metal siding. At the last meeting, additional information from the applicant was requested, including photographs of what the siding would look like if the variance was granted. I think some samples were also provided that I believe the board members have had a chance to look at. We did prepare a worksheet tonight to help us kind of look at the different factors that we have to consider for the variance request. And if it's helpful, we may just want to go through the factors and, just get a sense of what a majority of the board feels on each, and that will help, to indicate if we're ready to make a determination on the request.
So I'm looking at the area variance worksheet that we have. It says, in making a determination, the Zoning Board of Appeals shall take into consideration the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant. In making such determination, the board shall also consider. So the 5 items on this worksheet is what will guide our conversation this evening. So the first being whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. So I'd ask the board to open up any discussion.
You know, just to kind of recap some of the discussion from when we were talking about the variance for the height on the pole barn. You know, the board discussed the fact that the pole barn is located towards the rear of the property, set back from Main Street behind the existing residence. There is some existing vegetation that is included in the vicinity of the pole barn that the applicant has represented will remain in place after the pole barn is constructed. You know, there's a line of arborvitaes that are there now. The applicant represented that the pole barn was going to be used as part of his existing residential use of the property. Specifically, you know, the height variance was requested to allow sufficient space for him to park an RV or mobile home in the pole barn. So, you know, that representation's been made on the record that it is going to be used as part of the commercial, or I'm sorry, the residential use and not for any commercial purpose. So some of these factors that you already considered in granting the variance for the height, you know, may also be relevant to the request for variance on the siding. So I just wanted to, you know, just kind of refresh the board on the discussion from last month. You know, some of these factors I think are going to be, you know, more evident than others, but, you know, for the first one, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting the variance. Again, we're just talking about by granting the variance to allow the metal siding on the building.
Public comment, well, you're the applicant, so sure, come on up.
So pretty much the only thing I was hoping to emphasize what you talked about, and I actually took some time to drive up and down 146 multiple times today and looked off to the side and, you know, this is gonna sound silly, but the rubberneck look of actually trying to see the actual building, you can barely see it, you know. You're gonna see the roof, you know, which is obviously given. And I have full intentions of obviously, while the building was up, even looking over, standing in Willie Buchanan's parking lot from Altamont Glass area, I'm like, oh, I can still kind of see a part of the building there. I'm actually probably gonna put a spruce tree there in that area where you're not even gonna entirely, the visibility, I mean, Mr. Freeman, can you see it from your house?
No.
You know, like there's no, and it's probably well over, you know, 200 feet back behind the house. The part that I'm stressing as far as making look nice with this particular siding and all this other kind of stuff, I'm actually going to be the garage doors that are facing towards the commercial lot of Willie Buchanan's. I'm actually taking the garage doors that match my house, and they're going to be going on that building. All the windows that are, you know, in my house, I'm getting the grilled windows that are going in that building as well. But like I said, I mean, unless you physically turn down Howard Gage property or turn into Willie Buchanan's parking lot, you're not even going to ever really see it, you know. That's kind of one of my biggest stressors. And then the only other concern, I don't want to put a big spin on these things, but the board and batten siding that I did show you, the metal siding, is what I have full intentions of putting on the facade. The rest of the structure, given the availability of the product at the point of where we are standing right now, it's extended out to be well over like 40 days until I can get enough of the product to finish the rest of the building. The front I can do because I can get it in those particular sizes that they only make it in a 10-foot height, but aesthetically I can make it look nice to break it up with the garage doors and all that other kind of stuff. Going around the other part of the building where there's less ways to break it up, it's not gonna really look right. But that being said, I mean, we're gonna put a wainscoting all the way around the perimeter. You know, the nice windows, the nice doors, you know, and obviously I'm going to landscape directly around the building. And even for my own sake, from looking in my backyard, looking towards it, I'm going to be putting some other stuff around it as well. So my full intentions are not to hide the building. It's still gonna look nice, but I am a landscaper and that's kind of what I enjoy looking at more than structures. So,
Thank you.
yep.
So, I mean, based on our conversation last month and the description from Mr. Shank, personally, I don't see that an undesirable change will be produced. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay.
agree.
Okay, so I feel like that's a no. Moving on to the second item, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. And the answer to that is yes. The applicant could choose one of the several applicable or accepted siding choices, wood, vinyl. So that's a yes. Whether that's significant in our determination is up to the board. I think, as I mentioned before, a variance for this has not been requested or granted in any time I was involved in the board, so it's significant from that respect. I think Mr. Shank's comments and I know my own observation of the property make this deserving of a second look. Does anyone have any comment on that item?
I do have a comment that is, I think in some people's minds, this is setting a precedent. So if anyone else in the village comes to want to put a metal siding on an accessory structure, what would a determination here that this is allowable mean for a subsequent applicant?
So, my thoughts on it are, this is a unique property within the village. Many of the village lots are either within a neighborhood or part of the historical downtown, so they'll have a much smaller lot. So anything they do, it will be much more visible. There's a lot of depth to this lot, and the existing topography covers one whole side of it. Your neighbor to your left is up considerably, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think in my opinion, the unique features of this property lend itself to our consideration and set it apart from any other generic request. If I decided I wanted to put metal siding on my garage, I think I would have a much harder time because it's right in the heart of the village, smaller lot, everyone would be able to see it. But that's my opinion.
I would say that, yeah, we're setting a precedence per property, but being that, yes, this property is in the village, the location of it and everything, I would say, in my eyes, in my opinion, it's not a problem, but we also deal with these on an individual basis as they come to us. So if Jacob's Place was right next to the road, if this was a family farm or something like that, something that's been in the family or something like that, I'm just saying that, I could understand that, but this is not gonna be right there. And I would say, yeah, we're gonna set a precedence, but we also handle this on an individual basis, in my opinion.
Thank you. Moving on to number 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. I mean, the material that is used for siding, I'm not sure if that's substantial. I'm open to other people's opinion, but
I can just offer, this one's kind of hard
Yeah.
with a variance request like this, where they're actually asking for a variance from like a design consideration, like a color or in this case, a specific material. The board could look at it to say, well, it's, wood versus metal, and that's automatically going to be substantial. Or you could look at it in another way and say, well, he's presented photographs to, demonstrate it's, mimicking a traditional board and batten pattern, that, people do use with wood siding. So I don't think just the fact that it's metal per se makes it a substantial variance. I think you got to kind of look at it in the context of the variance that he's asking for, which is a change in the material, and maybe, does the appearance of the material, really present a substantial difference from what, a white painted wood siding would look like.
And I think that was really important for me to consider moving forward with this, is the fact that these pictures that we're looking at of the material that Mr. Schenk has here, if someone came up to you and said, here's a picture of my building with wood siding that's painted white, you would believe them. And if they said, here's a picture of my building with vinyl siding that's white, you would believe them. So there's nothing to distinguish it from being one material or another. So for that reason, I don't believe that this is a substantial request. If anyone disagrees, I'm happy to, okay.
No.
Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. Again, it's a design standard, so I don't believe that it will. Any comment, disagreement? Okay. Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the Board of Appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of an area variance. Yeah. We're here because he wants to do something that is otherwise prohibited in the code. And it's our job to decide if it's a reasonable request. So those are the factors that we need to consider. If there's any discussion, we can do that now. But it sounds like the board is leaning toward granting this request. So before we talk about that, are there, I know we stress the importance of the sort of hiding of and I just want to make sure that's reflected in the resolution.
So I can, just go over the draft resolution that
Yeah.
I prepared for the board. This is a resolution for a determination on the request for the area variance for the siding. You'll see it hasn't been drafted to grant or deny. It was going to be based on the board's discussion at today's meetings and, the findings of the board. Based on this discussion, it sounds as though a majority of the board members have indicated that 3 of the 5 factors weigh in favor of granting the variance for the reasons discussed. But the board does have the ability to put reasonable conditions on any approval that it grants. I know that we have heard, obviously the location of the building, but also some of the existing features on the site that have contributed, I think, to the discussion and those factors that tended to grant in favor of weigh in favor of granting the variance, like the existing trees that are there, the vegetation. The applicant just came up and said they were planning on planting an additional, I think you said spruce tree. If the existence of that vegetation, weighed, in favor of the majority of the board members thinking that the variance should be granted, you can include a condition that landscaping buffer, for lack of a better word, should be maintained, to mitigate, people's views of the pole barn in the rear of the property.
Yeah, I think that would be important to maintain that the screening vegetation should be maintained. If one of those arborvitaes dies, it should be replaced.
Perhaps also that the siding that was presented to us be the siding that's used.
Yeah.
My only stipulation with that was, like, my complex with that is the availability of, given the timing, given the structure's already up. You want me to have that for a second?
Please.
Like I mentioned before, I can get that siding and that dimensions to accommodate to the front of the building with the garage doors and the lowering of the front roof and everything to accommodate to the height definition. Just given the timing of everything happening, if I were to proceed further trying to get the board and batten for the remainder of the higher structures of the building, the backside, the open floor space, it would probably take me well over 60 days to actually get the actual material. I have, that's concerning to myself, given I've already put the building up and I've got open wood and everything else. That's up to the board, I guess, but it's just my biggest stressor is the visibility of even the rest of wherever it is, That's obviously something to think about.
The conversation from last month, the portrayal that this would be the choice, is a significant factor that led us to
Okay.
go down this path. So I think I would ask that be the siding that was presented to us, board and batten style, in white, be the siding.
Okay.
If we were to agree with this.
What would you use if you didn't use that siding?
It would be the similar, it's very it's the metal type siding, it's very similar to what the stuff is. From the 200 feet that we're looking from the road, you're not gonna visibly see that difference, and that's the biggest thing I stress. Nobody besides anybody that comes onto my property is going to see that building, it's just the largest concern for me is now I have a building permit that I got approved to be put up, framing and in structure, and now I'm gonna have a standing structure without siding for probably well over 60 days. I can put the front on, but that requires with that particular height siding, I have to put sheeting on the front of the building. And then I'm gonna have to wait 60 days until I can get that other siding. Which is concerning on a money cost standpoint for me, in getting the contractor hopefully back in a reasonable amount of time, to button up the building. Again, it's the visibility part of it, I'm okay, with breaking it up and trying to make the front look nice with that particular siding. But I don't know, the wait time is gonna be concerning to me.
And I'm sympathetic to those factors, but the way this was presented to us was that this was the appearance and that was the material. And so if that's not the case, then this is a different conversation, I think. So you can decide if that's worth it to you, but we were kind of led to believe that that was what we were considering.
I understand that fully. And it's just stressing the facade. It's just, again, going back to the visibility aspect of it. I would totally understand if that building is facing 146, you see the front. It's just, what I'm trying to stress is the portion that is visibly seen by Main Street, 146 potentially, if any, is going to be that front part of the building. There's plenty of buildings right up, you could go right up to the top of 146. There's a metal structure that has shakes, board and batten, metal siding on the sides, There's a lot of, that's just a common thing, a brick facade, on the front of a house and vinyl siding down the sides, It's, obviously a cost standpoint, and then also, obviously, I'm extremely concerned now with the exposed lumber for that amount of time, so.
The alternative, the other material that you spoke of, it's white?
What's that?
What
Yes.
color is it?
It's white, yeah.
And so what's the difference between it and what you
It's
showed
this,
us?
it's more of the, I guess, I don't wanna say the standard, but it's right here. This is the white.
This is what you, this is that.
No.
Well, that's my biggest stressor, from here to where I'm standing, if that's gonna look any different.
Oh, so this would be the other
This,
material.
the front facade would be that material, the board and batten material. which
Could you
is-
bring that
Yep.
over? Hi, this is going on forever. Could you flip it over so we could see what,
Well, you're not gonna be able to see the same. This is just the color that they had, so to be able to see the profile.
The white is the white,
oh. So this is what it would look like on the outside, except it's white.
Right, yep.
And you prefer this to that.
I prefer either, but
I think what he's doing is doing that on the front is gonna
facing
be
of the
this,
building is gonna look
and then the
nice.
sides are gonna be the other, which is like a
So
standard
for,
signing on that.
could you do the whole building in this?
Well,
I,
the conversation started to lean toward being in favor because he was considering something that was not a standard metal profile,
I see.
which was what was around when I assume the code was written, because this is noticeably different than that.
Yeah. I see.
So I guess, does the board consider this to be a significant change in the situation?
The board, the request for the variance was to allow for metal siding. The applicant has made representations to the board as to what the metal siding was going to look like, and the board based its deliberations on those representations. If since the last meeting, now the concern is that, timing and material supply, that, what he had represented the board in Batten isn't gonna be available for the entire structure, the board can consider whether or not it wants to grant the variance with the condition that all of the siding has to be this board and batten. And the alternative to the applicant is, he proceeded with erecting the pole barn knowing that we were gonna talk about the siding tonight, so although I empathize with, the desire to get it enclosed as soon as possible, you went ahead and started the construction. So the board can either grant the variance on the condition that the board and batten that was previously represented has to be used, or consider a condition that the board and batten has to be used on the front facade of the building, but the, other white metal siding would be acceptable on the other surfaces. It's up to the board, but, understanding that the deliberations we just had, some of the factors were dependent on, the fact that the siding that was chosen was intended to mimic the appearance of natural wood and patterns that are typically used for natural wood, so. But if the other sides of the building are going to be even less visible, then the board, that may be acceptable to the board. But it's up to you, and you have the ability to place a reasonable condition on any approval that you grant.
Is there a big cost difference between the two?
Substantial, yes. I mean, it's gonna cost me well over, just in a project standpoint, the front facade, compared to, there's about, it's irrelevant, I guess, but there's about a $12,000 difference. And, making the front aesthetically pleasing, spending that other money to add landscaping, to spruce up everything and hide the other aspect of the building, which you currently can't even see right now as it is. But, it is what it is.
Does anyone feel that significant details have changed and we should change course, or do people feel comfortable proceeding with conditions?
Can I just ask a question
Sure.
for my own understanding? Would it be the board and batten on the front and this side here, or just the front and then all three of the other sides?
I mean, that's just a generic photo. I'm not sure if that's just a photo of a
Well,
building.
just getting an idea how it's gonna be
Yeah, because it's
facing.
oriented with this, like, this side facing Main Street.
That side is facing Main Street, but that side is not visible at all.
But
It's hid-
remember though, we're talking about, like
Yeah.
you said, the front of it, so.
Yeah.
When we're looking at it,
The
it's
front,
gonna be
yeah.
that. And then the sides that your neighbors and
Yeah.
everything else is gonna be the other,
Okay.
in the back, right?
Yeah, that just throws a little bit of a, yeah, I'd have to, it's just, I don't know how the building's gonna look, but two side, like, it's like looking at a brick building that's got brick
Yeah.
on the front,
I
and
know
usually
what you're saying.
typically
I know
see
what you're
symmetrical on this other side, like, out of all things, that side with the front-facing garage door and everything, I understand the perspective of Main Street, but the actual facing this way, from mainly the only time they're gonna see is pulling into Altima Glass, that would basically, I would say, be the facade of the actual building. I don't know how it would work out with putting, if I'm gonna do that, I'd have to go all the way around, just as far as, the look of it,
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the front, the facade is going to be the board and batten, and the other three sides you're proposing is that?
Yes, with a wainscot going all the way around, which is, just another way to break it up, yep.
That's kind of what I meant.
Yeah.
And if just another question.
Sure.
For me. If the board was to place a condition on this that it had to be the board and batten, you could still choose to do wood on the other three.
My biggest stress with wood is the maintenance aspect of things, I think we've come a long ways with, obviously these metal products and the appeal of them, not even let alone, I understand when the village, set those codes, but even the standard metal siding has come a long ways as far as longevity, as far as, just appeal with the options of colors and so on and so forth. I totally understand some buildings in the past that you see with metal siding, you see them rotting up from the bottom because, they were just a bare wavy metal and stuff like that. I totally understand where you guys are coming from with that aspect of it. Overall look, like from that metal siding, is, within, there's eight buildings within 300 feet of me that have that metal siding on that, and, there's a beautiful one, I know it's not in the Village Altamont, but the same thing that I am thinking as far as the wainscot and the nice windows and the nice doors and, it has a red roof on it, but it's right there on Gun Club Road, has a nice key, they put cupolas on it and stuff like that, but it's a beautiful building, there is some that, you can tell that they put the metal siding on just to put the metal siding on, and that's totally understandable from where you guys are coming from, in that aspect of things. Covering up an old rotted out building or, something like that, I don't wanna point fingers at any buildings, but there is some around here that that was the intention, and that's what it shows, you know?
I mean, in my opinion, it would make more sense to do at least the three sides, the two sides in the back with the middle, and then the board and batten in the front. You put the board and batten on the front and on the side, I mean, that is going to look strange.
I think that's gonna, yeah, I agree with Deb.
It's, you know, symmetrical, you know, it's, like I said, I've said it probably time and time again, I can always relate it to a brick house. You know, everybody puts a nice facade with the brick, and then they wrap it around with the, you know, any type of siding or whichever, and it still has that nice, pretty appeal, you know? And it's, you know, on the immediate road, and you're looking right at it, you know? You're gonna see that metal, the other part too is the metal on the roof, which obviously that's irrelevant with the village code. I mean, metal roof is metal roof, and you can use whichever style you have, but the metal roof that's going on is like that white right there, you know? And that's the common metal roofing that's used.
So just so everyone's considering the picture in the same way, the gable end is what's facing Main Street, and the garage door side of this picture is what's facing Altamont Glass.
Correct.
And when you're saying the front, you're talking about the garage door side.
Yeah, I mean, typically when I think of a front, you
Yeah,
know, it's just.
I just want to make sure we're
yeah,
all talking about the
yeah.
same thing. Okay. So then, it sounds like the condition that we're thinking about is board and batten on the front side, the door side facing Altamont Glass. And it sounds like people are willing to allow the alternate metal on the remaining three sides. Do I have that understanding correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so then the condition should reflect that. And then the condition for the screening plantings. And I think that's all we discussed.
Sorry, one more question. Will there be wainscoting with the board and batten on the front of it, or no, just around the three sides?
The only thing that I'm considering, again, this is all aesthetic look, I'm gonna make it look nice, but I've gotta consider, I don't want 3 or 4 different colors on the building. So basically, if I'm gonna have the white, and then I wanted to do the wainscoting in the color of the roof, if I can get the board and batten in the color of the,
I got
you know,
it.
to kind of get it the
Yeah.
same look. If
Okay.
not, it's gonna probably be the all white.
Okay.
That's just, you know, you don't wanna throw a third color in the mix. Even if it's close, it's just gonna look, it's gonna look funny, so.
But you'll have the wainscoting on the three sides
Yes,
regardless?
yes.
Okay.
So metal board and batting.
All right.
What do you call this? You're calling this board and bat, correct?
Yes,
And what do you call this?
that's a good question.
Siding,
We call it
roofing, standard,
standard.
Yeah.
Standard metal.
standard metal.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff that's obviously even more standard than that per se, but yeah, I mean, I guess you would classify that as standard nowadays, yeah.
Does this have like a brand name or a part name?
The only thing I would know, if I can try to text the builder, maybe he can throw something at me, but I'm not entirely sure.
Because I don't know how we were going to specify it.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's a, what is this, a 2-rib metal panel?
Yeah, there is different styles of that particular stuff. It's very slightly different, but from one to the next. I can text him quickly and see if he can give me some type of answer.
Because I think the board would be, this condition would be based on the
That-
we're seeing.
samples you're
that
giving
sample,
us.
Yeah.
correct.
So it'd be the board and batten on the front, the
And sample two,
standard,
that,
yeah.
yes, okay.
So if you could get us a more specific.
Yeah, I'll see
when
what,
we
I can see if I can reach out to him real
Write
quick.
it up. yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So then we're considering approving this variance with those conditions. Do you want to just kind of summarize the conditions? Thank you.
So, based on the findings that we have, which we'll type up and we'll attach those to the resolution for the record, it would be a resolution to approve or grant the application for an area variance to allow metal siding on the pole barn. And the approval would be subject to the following conditions. Number one, the applicant shall be required to maintain the existing vegetative buffers around the proximity of the pole barn, including the existing stand of arborvitaes. Condition number two, the front facade of the pole barn where the garage door is located shall be the white board and batten siding presented to the board, while the other three sides of the pole barn would be the standard white metal siding with wainscoting that was shown to the board. And if we get the more specific model number, or we'll include that in.
It's called, Roger, this is from a Google search. Oh, there we go. He just texted me back. Perfect. Max Rib Panel.
Thank you.
Do you have a manufacturer?
Please.
Well, if we're going to specify it, we're going to specify it.
Would you still like me to read what we have, even though it's not? It
The
doesn't-
resolution?
Yeah,
I can summarize it if you'd like.
okay.
Yeah.
And we can vote based on the summary?
Yes.
Okay, all
Yes. So what the board has in the agenda materials tonight is a draft resolution. The resolution was to either grant or deny the application for the area variance. The application recites that the applicant is looking for an area variance for, to allow for metal siding, that a variance is needed from section 35520A6A of the code. The resolution notes that this was classified as a type 2 action exempt from review under seeker, that a public hearing on the area variance request was held on February 24th, 2026. The board reviewed the materials submitted by the applicant, and on February 24th, after the close of the public hearing, voted to approve the area variance for the height of the pole barn after finding the benefit to the applicant outweighed the detriment to the public, and it was based on specific findings of the board. The board tabled the request last month for the area variance on the metal siding so the applicant could provide additional information, including a sample of the proposed metal siding. Those samples have now been provided. The ZBA has reviewed and considered the same, and now therefore, the ZBA does hereby grant the application for an area variance to allow metal siding on the accessory structure, subject to the following conditions. Be those two conditions I just read off, one being that the applicant has to maintain the existing vegetative buffers and stand of arborvitaes. And number two, will be required to install the white board and batten presented to the board on the facade of the building where the garage door is located. And then we would have the standard max rib panel white metal siding with wainscoting on the three other sides of the building.
Thank you.
I'm not even gonna try to.
That'd be good.
All right, then could I have a motion to approve the area variance with the previously mentioned conditions?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
In favor?
In favor.
In favor.
Be careful handling it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Me too.
All right. The second item on the agenda is an update on the application for final plat amendment related to subdivision previously approved and located at 145D Bozenkill Road, Altamont, New York. Just prior to this meeting, we did receive some guidance from our village engineer, and there was also one letter that I'll read into the record. Dear members of the zoning board, I'm writing as an adjacent property owner to the Bozengill Road subdivision to respectfully share several concerns regarding the proposed final plat amendment adjusting the lot line between lots 3 and 4. I appreciate the board's time and service to the community and offer these points to help ensure that any decision is fully informed and well supported by the record. At the outset, I respectfully request that this correspondence be entered into the official record and provided to all board members in connection with tonight's 7 p.m. meeting. I have also attached a PDF of this message so distribution can be done easily. First, the original subdivision approvals clearly identified federally regulated wetlands and required updated delineation and deed restrictions to prevent disturbance. The Planning Board resolution dated June 28th, 2021 references Army Corps related wetlands and relies on a delineation originally conducted in November 2004. Meeting materials also indicate that later review relied largely on a site walkover rather than a full redelineation. Given the age and limited nature of that update, it is reasonable to question whether reliance on a 20-year-old boundary remains sufficient under current environmental and hydrological conditions. In the applicant's environmental assessment form, question 13 acknowledges that the presence of federally regulated wetlands, and question 17 confirms stormwater discharge into wetlands and natural drainage systems. Even if wetlands are not directly filled, adjusting lot boundaries may increase contiguous upland area adjacent to them, potentially enabling additional impervious surface or development pressure closer to sensitive wetland areas. This concern is highlighted by the broader hydrologic context reflected in federal mapping, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Wetland classifications show a connected system extended from riverine wetlands in the project area into Bozenkill Creek and downstream forested wetlands. This indicates a continuous watershed connection rather than an isolated wetland feature. Additionally, New York significantly expanded its regulated freshwater wetlands jurisdiction effective January 1st, 2025, through amendments to the Freshwater Wetlands Act. These changes broaden protections for smaller and hydrologically connected wetlands and remove prior acreage thresholds. Given these updates, it is reasonable to ask whether assumptions underlying earlier approvals remain fully current today. There are also inconsistencies in the environmental record that deserve attention. The application materials indicate that no threatened or endangered species are present. However, the official New York State DEC Environmental Resource Mapper identifies this location as being in the vicinity of bats listed as endangered or threatened and advises contacting the regional office. This includes species such as the northern long-eared bat, which is federally endangered. Even if the mapper reflects habitat sensitivity rather than confirmed presence on a specific parcel, it signals environmental considerations that warrant careful evaluation. I would also ask the board to consider infrastructure capacity and cumulative impacts. Village discussions and public materials have acknowledged sensitivity around water supply levels, and it would be prudent to ensure that amendments enabling further development in development intensity remain consistent with long-term infrastructure planning. Finally, from a procedural standpoint, boundary adjustments and plat amendments are discretionary actions where wetlands, hydrologic connectivity, and protected species concern exist. It is reasonable to evaluate whether prior secret conclusions remain fully applicable. Ensuring that the environmental record reflects current conditions helps support a clear and defensible decision. Taken together, reliance on an outdated delineation, acknowledged wetland connectivity, expanded wetland protections under current law, potential endangered species habitat, and cumulative watershed considerations, I respectfully believe that approving this amendment in its current form would raise significant environmental and record-based concerns. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the board to deny the proposed plat amendment, or at a minimum require updated delineation and environmental review sufficient to ensure that current conditions and regulations are fully addressed. Thank you for your time, your service, and your careful consideration of these concerns. Respectfully, Garrett Spring, 157 Bozenkill Road. Before anyone speaks, do you want to
Sure.
go over the findings of the engineer?
Sure. And I'll just, for everyone's benefit, just give a little recap on this one. This application was originally submitted to the village as a proposed lot line adjustment. The lot lines to be adjusted were included on an approved subdivision plat that was approved by the ZBA back in 2022, I believe, and then filed in the Albany County Clerk's Office in 2023. The filed subdivision plat had a number of notes on it and restrictions on the plat. Relevant to this application, there was an identified and purportedly delineated wetland on Lot 3 that was identified as being jurisdictional Army Corps wetlands. The applicant, as part of that application, represented that that area was not going to be disturbed, and so that review resulted in a note being placed on the subdivision plat that identified that area as Army Corps jurisdictional wetlands. There was to be signs posted that that area wasn't to be disturbed, and it was clear that no building permits could be issued for any improvements in that area. The map also included a note that there was to be no building permits issued for construction on what was called Lot 4, based on the applicant's representations that there wasn't going to be any building on that parcel, and at the time, resistance to any further wetland delineation on that parcel because of the representation that there would be no building there. So those notes were on the map, they're filed in the clerk's office, and were to be memorialized in deed restrictions in the title. So when the lot line adjustment map was presented to the village, it proposed a change in the lot line between Lot 3 and 4, which would have had the effect of bringing land from Lot 4 that was not to be built on into Lot 3, but also it had revised the boundaries of the identified Army Corps jurisdictional wetland within Lot 3. So the board determined that it would not waive the subdivision process for a simple lot line adjustment, and this requested change would have to be processed as an amendment to the filed plat. So the board opened the public hearing on the application at the last meeting. We did receive some comments from interested residents, members of the public. The board adjourned that public hearing for continuation at a future date. The board has not made a seeker determination. It was determined that we needed the assistance of a technical consultant to review what the applicant had submitted. We did just get that back. It came in late last night and was circulated to members of the board and the applicant today. It's a memo from Barton and LaJudas, which offers their comments and recommendations on the information that they reviewed. Just to summarize, they identified that the wetland delineations that were identified on the proposed lot line adjustment map did not include any any accompanying report, no evidence or data, supporting how the delineations were made and the current boundaries of the wetland were determined. It's noted that, the applicant had maintained there was no change in the wetland boundaries from 2024 to 2021, based on, them having someone go out and rewalk the site. But then from 2021, or 2023, when the map was filed, to now 2025 or 2026, we do see significant changes based on what you're presenting in the extent of that wetland and the boundaries of the wetland. So Barton and LaJudas has given the board some specific recommendations of additional information that should be requested from the applicant to verify the current boundaries of the wetland, and also to request a jurisdictional determination from the New York State DEC to confirm if, they would now consider these to be state jurisdictional wetlands under the new wetland statute that did come into effect January 1st, 2025. Because the effect of that would be, if it's a state-regulated wetland, you not only have the wetland itself that shouldn't be disturbed, but also a jurisdictional buffer around that. I'm happy to turn over to the applicant if you'd like to make some comments for the board to consider. You all have Barton LaJudas's memo, which is part of the record, and we can discuss that more after the.
Yeah, before anyone continues, I just want to make note that the public hearing is still open. So we're sort of now in that phase for public hearing for this. And I would just like to remind anyone who's choosing to speak that this is about a potential lot line adjustment. No building permits are being discussed, and I would appreciate if everyone can keep their comments on the topic. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's John Hako from Mazzata Vaginalis. I was the attorney that represented the applicant VAMR Development, the sale of 145C Bosenkill Road to Wes Price, who's in the audience. So he is also here, and I believe he was here last month. I'm also here with John Hitchcock from ABD Engineering. Luigi couldn't make it tonight, so to replace him, we needed two people. But there are a lot of things to say I do have a copy of the Barton letter. It was given to us by the local Barton office. For some reason, the referral to the consulting engineer ended up in the Syracuse office of B&L rather than the local office that actually reviewed the plans and approved the drainage plan, the erosion plan that was before this board when it was approved in 2021 and when the map was ultimately signed and thereafter filed. It's a little difficult to put the toothpaste back in the tube, which this board is kind of trying to do by revisiting the wetlands issue. The wetlands were delineated in 2004. The 2021 approval of the plat, which was actually a reapproval of the plat, originally happened in 2019. Both the 2019 and 21 approvals had a type 1 determination, a type 1 seeker determination, but then a neg deck followed. So at that point in time, the only condition remaining was to finalize the wetlands delineation, which was done, approved by this board, signed by the chairman, and put on record. So the whole issue of raising the state having jurisdiction or possibly having to make a jurisdictional determination, what's called a JD, seems completely irrelevant to what's before this board because that's all grandfathered anyway. There was a type 1 determination, a negative declaration, and that can't be revisited by this board. It's grandfathered.
Well, if I can just speak to that. As part of your application here, you are requesting a change to the delineated wetland boundary on the filed map.
Which is between the applicant and ACE.
Well,
I mean, respectfully, I mean,
no,
that's really,
respectfully, the board has to process this as a proposed plat amendment. That's an action that's subject to seeker. that will require a determination based on the change that you're now
Well,
requesting.
see, I respectfully disagree with that, because we're still talking about a lot line adjustment, which is specifically a type 2
But you
secret action.
submitted a map that included a proposed change, not just to the wetland boundary on Lot 3 that has nothing to do with the lot line adjustment, but also eliminates some of the notes that were placed on the prior subdivision map. I mean, it is an amendment to your filed plat. I mean, you cannot deny that the wetland boundaries are now changed on the map that you submitted, and you're saying it's based on a 2025 new wetland delineation. So what Barton and LaJudas is saying is that you haven't presented the backup information for us to be able to verify that that is an accurate delineation. And the effect of us approving that plat amendment would be to open up more land on Lot 3 for building. I mean, that is
You wanna
the
speak to that?
reality.
There's no proposal for building on that.
Understand, but
So
what
can-
you're
can the
asking is for us to,
applicant put a house back there? He can't have two houses on one piece of land, right?
well, no, but he
So
could have an
then,
accessory
I don't-
structure, it could be a garage, it could be a swimming pool, it could be something
But
that
that's
right
not what's
now.
on the plan right now.
But you're asking us to amend the deed restricted area on the filed subdivision plat where currently there could be no improvements. So it is a change
I
that
don't
the
think
board
we ever
has
asked this
to.
board to approve the wetlands delineation. We asked the board to approve the lot layout, which is what a subdivision is. So,
But you've
That's-
submitted a map.
but we're not
with-
asking this board to approve where the wetlands are. The wetlands are
Well, you
simply
are
a
by putting
they're a
different-
statement of fact.
The board doesn't approve wetlands. You guys don't say, oh, that's where the
I mean, that's
wetlands
not the
are.
jurisdiction of this panel to determine where the wetlands are. We're merely stating, based upon a recent walk by a wetlands biologist, or at least
Right.
an individual with familiarity with what constitutes wetlands vegetation, where the limits of the wetlands are.
And they're different than what
And
was
they are
approved in.
different, and I think the implementation
So
of
the
the
applicant-
stormwater drainage for this subdivision that was approved by this board probably had some effect.
The
Well,
applicant-
probably, we don't know that.
The
All we know is that you
applicant,
Well,
proposed
there's a
to
lot,
line
change.
the
adjustment.
BNO letter has a lot of probablys that have absolutely no proof.
Without
as
this
well,
lot
so.
line adjustment of proposal, the applicant could have went and got those delineations done, never brought it to the board.
Well, no,
It's
that would have
irrelevant
been,
to what is being proposed to
that
you.
would have been a violation of your plat approval, which had those areas to be deed restricted
Changing
and
the deed
posted.
restriction might be, but
Well,
changing the wetland
yes.
delineation is not.
And that's
because
all-
That is an Army Corps
Okay.
action.
Okay.
The deed restriction is the law, not the delineation.
So as counsel to the ZBA, my opinion is that the application falls under your jurisdiction to review and approve amendments to a filed plat. The request for an amendment changes the lot line. It also changes the wetland area that we required to be deed restricted under our prior approval. The deed restriction would prevent the Village of Altamont from issuing any building permits for improvements in those areas. The change to the filed map would adjust those locations, which would then open up additional areas of the property for potential improvement. For that reason, it's processed as a plat amendment. That is an action subject to seeker. You know, I'm not an engineer. Barton and LaJudas has given you their professional opinion as to additional information the board can request. And it's up to the board to determine if you want to move forward or if you want to request additional information from the applicant consistent with what Barton and LaJudas recommended.
I also like to point out that the letter that went to the Syracuse office was not signed or reviewed by an engineer. So, there's that too.
Certainly not the reviewing engineers
Yeah.
who approved, or who recommended the approval in '21. Now, we have discussed, I mean, if the board wants us to repeat the notes and the conditions that were in the approved 2022 map and retain the current wetlands delineation without changing it, without amending it, I guess I'll have to ask council would then this application only involve a lot line adjustment?
I mean, I'm not going to tell you what you're requesting. I mean,
See, I don't think we're looking to punt on an issue if the wetlands have indeed changed. There is some suggestion that the applicant or contractors the applicant engaged had something to do with amending or filling or disturbing the wetlands in some way. There's no proof whatsoever, and frankly, that's an enforcement matter for the town building department to determine.
yeah, and I'm
And they issued a CO, and Mr. Price is there and living in the home. So I don't quite understand when that issue wasn't raised before, why it's being raised now.
It was raised by Barton and LaJudas. The ZBA's jurisdiction
She
is
never
for,
did a site visit, right, I think, for what we can tell, so. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm speaking
That's okay.
off camera here.
that's okay. I
But
mean,
yeah,
whether,
she-
you know,
She never visited the site. She referred to aerial, photographs, so.
whether, you know, there's any violations or code enforcement issues, you know, that's a separate issue, not the ZBA's
Right, but-
jurisdiction. We agree on that.
But the ship has also sailed to some extent because there's a CO. If there was a problem during construction
I
and there
don't
was
think the
disturbance
ship has
going
sailed
on-
if there's a CO issued by the Village of Altamont, if there was any violation of any Army Corps regulations regarding a delineated wetland.
Well-
But regardless of that, for the ZBA, for what we're here for tonight, you have submitted to the board a map that alters the area that was to be deed restricted pursuant to the board's prior approval. You have submitted that to the board. The board is under an obligation to review that. We cannot process that as a simple lot line adjustment. That's why we're treating it as a plat amendment. If you want to amend your application, you can amend your application, but for right now, what we have before us are the recommendations of the board's technical consultant. You know, it's up to the board to decide how it would like to proceed with the information it has before it right now.
So I'd ask, can we amend it on record right here, right now, or are you gonna make us go back and redo applications?
Yeah, you have to redo your application. You have submitted something to us. You have submitted a map where you are representing,
So we wanna treat it as just a condition to revert to the.
Use the microphone, please.
So we can't just treat it as a condition to revert back to the original wetlands, put that on the map that's submitted for stamping by the chairman?
I mean,
And we do conditions all the time.
I mean, it
So-
sounds as though, I mean, a wetland delineation on a map should be based on some verifiable evidence. If
Okay,
you're
so
saying
we're
you're just
gonna go
gonna go
back to
back
the
and reverse it.
2021 wetland delineation that was approved, that is still good up until May of 2026, so we still got a couple months on this thing. Let's go back to it. We don't need another delineation. Simple.
So, I mean, we've sought expert advice on an application that now is changing.
If the applicant wants to resubmit a revised application, they're free to do that. You have recommendations before you of your technical consultant based on the application that's before you right now.
All right, so based on the recommendations, it is recommended to the board that we table the discussion until these findings can be verified.
Are you talking about the recommendations of Johanna Duffy? Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
I guess hearing that she never visited the site and is in Syracuse, that does make me uncomfortable, I have to say.
So the recommendation is that we table it and,
What's that?
Isn't this still a public hearing?
yes,
So I'd like to come up and talk.
sure.
Yeah.
So while he's coming up, the recommendation is that we table it until we can verify some of this information. If during that time you want to change your application, the public hearing
Well,
would be
we've
left.
also discussed with, let me get his name correct, Don Fletcher at the local BNL office, because he was actually part of the original review team.
And an engineer.
And he's a PE, so.
And if there is more information to be provided from BNL, then that would be considered next month. So you're welcome to change the application for next month, But based on the information that we have, I think the recommendation is that we table it until some of this information can be verified. Now, if in that time you decide to change the application, then we may not need to wait as long as is necessary to have all this information verified. I'm a fourth grade teacher. I can't make sense of half of this, so.
No, there's a lot of things that intersect here, no question, so.
Wesley Price, the landowner. This is the third month we're here. And I stopped in 2 days after this meeting. I think this lady made the recommendation to have somebody come visit the site. No one visited the site. And I specifically asked, based on your discussion, who's coming to the site as the owner. I wanted to know when. And I was told, once the snow melts, the snow's been melted for 3 weeks now. Mysteriously, we get a letter last night. That's kind of funny. Now I find out the person's in Syracuse. I don't care what your issues are with Ken Romansky. I bought the property. And I'll ask you, the 7,500 feet does not include any wetlands, does it? It does not.
It does not, no.
So
No, it's
what
all
are we
part of lot
talking
4.
about? I own the property now. So if it's 5 feet additional, it doesn't matter. I own it. It's part of the original sale. The 7,500 has no wetlands on it. So I don't know what we're talking about here.
I understand your frustration, and
But just stick to the facts. I own the property. If it changed 5 feet or didn't change 5 feet, you're making amendments and deciding things on the fly. So just vote on it tonight.
we're not, though.
If I can-
The
You are.
The application is making changes.
It doesn't matter. I own the property. I don't care what their application says. The 7,500 feet does not include any wetlands.
If I can just please. You came before this board prior to closing on the property.
No, I did not.
We
I
have
wasn't
the-
here before buying the property.
The application was submitted
came
prior.
before the board before the property was closed on. You were informed prior to the closing that the board was not,
Me?
the applicant
The
was
applicant,
informed
right.
prior to closing that this wasn't going to be treated as a simple lot line adjustment. It would require a plat amendment.
I can't speak
The
to
closing
that.
was completed and the deed was filed. You do not own the 7,500 feet of Lot 4. You have an easement on it pending further board approval of the required lot line adjustment.
I said the wetlands that are on the property that are being questioned are now mine. And they're, the signs,
And they're
everything's up.
deed restricted.
Right.
Right.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about 7,500 feet. So I don't really understand what, other than, I understand there's a lightning rod topic. I heard that last month. None of it applied to what we're doing. And we're still talking about something that doesn't apply. The 7,500 feet, I don't care what's on this application. You can make an amendment and just say, I get it. The guy's getting 7,500 feet that has no wetlands on it.
And if-
What changes?
if that was the conversation, it would be a very different conversation for us, but that's not what was on the application. And maybe that's not what you intended, but that's what was presented to us, a
So how-
change
how-
in the wetland.
How does that change anything, though? For a land lot adjustment, a lot
Because it's
line
no
adjustment?
longer a lot line adjustment, it's a plat adjustment, which is an entirely different process. And because it's a wetland, it required us, a board, to
But
get,
just like you've done the last two meetings, then you can take her recommendation, or you can just say, let's just be logical here. Let's set this to vote and put it to bed. Because all we're doing is adding 7,500 feet to my property. And if everybody is so frustrated with Ken, just think about it for a second. I'm taking land back from him. Isn't that what you want?
I don't think this has anything to do with who
Well,
developed
all
the
I'm
property.
hearing is anger and frustration, and I don't
Not
want.
from the board. Not from the board.
I disagree with
I have a
that.
question. So the additional property you want to add, does, on any map of the wetlands, does it contain wetlands?
Not on our wetland map, no.
Okay.
I'd just like to-
On
if I-
any version of any year, it doesn't contain
If I
wetlands.
can just revisit that point, when the application was approved in 2023, the applicant represented that they weren't going to do updated wetland delineations on Lot 4, and represented that there was going to be no building on Lot 4. Therefore, that is how the note resulted in the filed map, that there were to be no building permits issued on Lot 4, including the portion that is now proposed to be included into Lot 3. Again, if you want to revise your application to put that note back on the map,
I don't believe Mr. Price is intending on building.
Nobody's
anything.
proposing to build anything. I think that's why everybody's frustrated up here.
if you,
I spoke to that last month, if there is no application, there is no, and.
you've submitted a map that removes the restriction of issuing building permits on that land. If you did not intend to do that, you are free to amend your application. We must review the
Let me speak to
application that you
I
submitted to
mean,
the board.
Per Luigi this afternoon, when I talked with him on the phone, that's inadvertent. There was no intention to change any of the terms that were original, or notes, or conditions that were on the original
But you
file.
acknowledge that they were changed.
I would acknowledge that the notes were different.
So
I don't
we
think
must
there was-
review what's
But I don't
before
think that
us.
was intended to be an amendment to the
Okay, so-
conditions. The conditions are
so
the
you-
conditions. I think we have a semantical difference, though.
and
If you're stating that what we're, because you can't really map a wetland. That's not under the jurisdiction of the sport. I think what you're asking is that we're seeking a change to the conditions of approval in that we're reducing the area subject to deed restriction, showing a reduced wetlands area.
Correct. And
So
our
it's a
consultant
semantical
suggested
thing.
that we should
Yeah.
have additional information before we would approve anything
But
like
that
that.
wouldn't, yeah, but that doesn't mean revisiting what delineations were done before the map was approved in '22.
No, you're
because-
submitting a delineation you say was done in 2025
25,
with no
correct.
supporting information. That's what Barton
And
and
if
Judas is
we-
talking about.
And if
Because
we
it's
re,
irrelevant to the application right now.
I don't agree. You're asking to
And-
remove a restriction that was a condition of the prior
So
approval.
I understand a note, like you were saying, got left off the plan or got moved off the plan, whatever. We do reference the subdivision, the original plat subdivision, so those notes are on that plan where they belong. We're not asking for development of Lot 4, so we're just asking for a lot line adjustment.
If you want to amend your application, submit an amended application. Represent in the application that the original condition that no building permit shall be issued for the land in the former Lot 4. Issue a new map showing no change in the wetland delineation that was approved in 2023, no change in the deed restricted area, so there's no potential for permits to be issued for any other improvements, then that's a
only-
very different
I
application.
only know of something that was approved in 2021 by a conditional approval of the board. The map was signed in 2022. Was there something else in 2023? I just want to,
The file map in 2022. I
okay,
apologize.
all right, yeah, I just want to know if there wasn't something else. All right. That's all I've seen, Kyle.
I'm just not sure how this map changes the conditions.
Well,
of Lot
maybe you
4.
should speak to your legal counsel and the board, you
I
know,
think
if
he
if
would
you want to
agree with me.
continue, then we can.
Okay. So just to reiterate, sir, if you decide to change your application and have it just be a simple lot line adjustment, this is a very easy conversation, but that's not what's reflected, so we're gonna move based on the recommendations of the engineering firm that we asked to review this, okay? Are there any other comments from the public? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we'll continue the public hearing and then consider
Yeah.
any changes. made.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah, I have a question.
sure.
As I understand it, we have a piece of property that's bisected by a wetland. And what the applicant wants to do is make more yard on the other side of the wetland. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, and that wetland completely bisects the property.
Well, it's more toward the back, but yes.
In order to get from one side to the other, in order to not disturb the wetland, he would have to go either in a helicopter or on adjacent property to get there.
No, that's not correct. So you could do a number of things. You could do a footbridge. You could do a walking bridge with techno posts, because that's not considered a disturbance to the wetlands.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
there's
was-
ways to access the proper, yeah,
So-
without
so-
disturbing the wetlands.
So putting a bridge in with what you call techno posts?
You could do techno posts, depending on the length, you could just do an arc walking bridge. You see them all
Okay,
over the place.
So a techno post is not disturbing the wetland?
Correct.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, I just didn't understand that.
Yeah, no, we've done them in a number of areas for walking bridges on walking trails through the wetlands.
All right, I understand that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Just so I understand, because I've tried to stop here, I think I talked to the mayor 3 months into this, and how am I supposed to get information or figure out what we're doing? We just keep coming to every meeting and making a new amendment. Why didn't we do this 60 days ago?
Because
Is
we
my-
had to act on the application that was submitted to us prior to you. So you're now at the result, you're dealing with the fallout from an application that was submitted before you had the property.
I'm not so sure of that. I mean, like I said, I come in and I ask, as a new resident,
Uh-huh.
I heard at the meeting, Barton and Lugidice is coming out to my site. And it never happened. So I am getting frustrated because it's like, there's no plan here. And then I hear that, well, just amend the application. We could have done that 60 days ago with the other gentleman back here who wasn't part of the equation. So I would just encourage you to keep it what it is and just vote for the 7,500 feet so I can move on.
I would love to be able to do that, but that's not what's reflected on the application.
You just approved some guy's siding and made a decision that you're okay with that and said, well, we'll deal with it on a case-by-case basis. So you just did what you wanted for him.
We didn't do what we wanted. We decided on
I don't know what else you
small
call- I don't know what else you call it then.
architectural detail, okay? This is a significant change based on the application that was submitted. Now, if what you're intending is not that significant, please change the
I just told
application.
you. It doesn't even make sense.
Okay.
The wetlands are now mine on my property that I already bought.
Mm-hmm.
We're not discussing that. I don't care what they have on their map. If they're 5 feet shorter, longer, we're not talking about that. I own it now. We're talking about the 75 feet beyond that.
Yeah. And if that's all you're doing and there's no change, then submit the application to reflect that, and this is a very easy conversation.
This is the third month that we've been told, okay, just do this, and we're gonna, no problem. And now we got people from Syracuse not reviewing things, no one came out to this, so nothing sounds easy, respectfully. So I'd be careful saying that.
If all you're doing is asking for a lot line adjustment and there's no changes to the map other than that, it doesn't require an engineering report.
I don't think we made this difficult.
Let me just again
The
reiterate.
board made it difficult.
Let me reiterate, the board can only review the application that you submitted. You submitted an application to amend a filed plat. It was not a simple lot line adjustment. Whether you had anything to do with that application, I don't know. But the fact is, we can only review what is before us. The village has already spent money to have a consultant review the materials that you submitted to give the board their professional opinion that they cannot approve the request that you have made without additional information. If you expect the village to have someone go out and walk your property or confirm your wetland delineation, we can set up an escrow account and you can pay for that. Or you can amend your
That wasn't my
application.
recommendation. That was your recommendation.
If you
It's
are
not
now-
necessary.
If you are now changing your application, submit a new application, and we're gonna need a new owner authorization if the property has changed
Your
hands.
opinion is great. Do what you want. You're a board. She's an attorney. This has gone absolutely bonkers.
Okay, so I
So-
recommend that you file new paperwork to reflect what you're intending, and this is much simpler. Can I have a motion to keep the public hearing open until next month first?
I'll motion that.
Yes.
Approved.
Approved.
Approved. Approved.
Approved.
Approved. If, before the next meeting, we have a different application in front of us, then we'll consider whatever's turned in. If we don't have a different application, we have several recommendations from the engineering firm. So either we have answers on those, or we have a different application, okay?
If the board, would like us to send a letter to the applicant requesting this information so that, if they elect to proceed with the application that's before us, at least they're clear on what additional information needs to be submitted.
Yeah. Do you know if you intend to,
I believe the plan is to submit a map that shows the same wetlands as delineated in the 2022 signed map, and
to avoid any changes
so
and just
that
have it
the-
be lot line
so that the
consideration?
application is the bare essentials,
Okay.
really just a lot line
With all the same
adjustment.
notes.
With the same notes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That's it. Now, the existing, you're familiar with the recorded deed, obviously, so
Yeah.
the deed restrictions on 145C refer to the current map. They don't refer to, they also,
The
or a
current map
map
that
to
you're-
be filed, but if the map
Well,
to
that
be
you're
filed is
asking
the
now
same.
to be changed,
Yeah,
so-
right. So if it goes back to status quo.
So right now, what's restricted is what's on file with the county
Right,
clerk's office.
right.
This
That's
request
correct.
changed that.
Right.
I mean, you can
I had-
explain it to your client, but I mean, we're not being difficult, it's just
I
we can't
believe I
ignore that
understand your
fact.
position on that. I don't fully agree with it, but understand it. All right.
Great, thank you.
All right.
I guess I'd like to state for the record that I'm not comfortable depending on a assessment of someone who's never been to the site. I mean, I think it's ridiculous, so.
Yeah, I don't know how they determine.
I mean, I
How it's
can
reviewed?
speak to that. I mean, that is done all the time.
Okay.
If you have if the planning board zoning ZBA has a technical consultant, it's typically step one, they review the information that was submitted by the applicant, they compare it against any specific application requirements in the code, and give recommendations to the board as to what information needs to be submitted for a complete application. We are not, as the village, we do not take the initiative to go out and delineate wetlands on people's property. They submit information, we need to determine if it's sufficient to make a decision based on the standards and application requirements of our code. Sometimes we need the assistance of a professional consultant to help us to say, okay, they submitted this map with a note on it that says, based on a November 2025 delineation. Is that enough for us to be able to approve a new plat that shows, a different area that is now buildable? And, that's the purpose of the, Barton and LaJudas reviewing what was submitted and giving us their opinion as to say, yes or no, you can't say for certain based on the information they gave you that you should move forward. So it's, it is very standard for technical consultants and town designated engineers to review the material submitted by an applicant. Certainly, you are able to request or require a site visit. Just be mindful, if you engage a professional consultant, that's a cost to the village unless you have the applicant set up an escrow account to pay for those fees. So the village has already paid Barton and LaJudas to prepare this memo. If this application moves forward, my recommendation to the board would be to require the applicant to set up an escrow to pay for additional professional services.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with that. It doesn't sound like that's where they're headed, but, okay. Does anyone have any new or old business to bring up? Okay. We were given the minutes from our February 24th meeting. Does anyone have any changes to the record as presented? Seeing none, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as printed?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
So Mark first and Lori second. Okay, roll call. Board Member Freeman.
In favor.
Board Member Litton.
In favor.
Board Member Lucarco.
In favor.
Board Member Kincaid.
In favor.
Board Member Trout.
In favor?
And Chairperson Sullivan.
In favor.
Thank you.
And finally, a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make that.
I'll second it.
In favor.
In favor.
In favor?
In favor.